Hey, you fans, welcome back to finally another Star Wars Expanded Universe review. And today I have Dawn of the Jedi Into the Void by Tim Lebbon. Oh boy, I gotta say, this is probably the worst Star Wars book that I've ever written. And I feel so bad because I really want a book like this. I just wish it was written like completely differently. I wish it had more tie-ins to the actual comic books because the comic books I feel to me really portrayed what was actually going back on then, 25,000 years ago. This book is just it doesn't really give you that. When you pick this book up off of a bookshelf at the bookstore, you think Dawn of the Jedi, I'm going to learn about what the Jedi were up to back then. Nope, it's not at all what this is. This is just kind of a one-off adventure with this Jedi Ranger, and it's 300 pages long. Although I feel like it's a little unnecessary. Honestly, I feel like this would work so much better if it were like a Tales book set in this era. I think I will take into account that this era is pretty unpolished. I do get that. Because I know there wasn't a whole lot of content for this, and I think part of that was probably Disney's fault for buying out the EU, or just Star Wars in general. I mean, now I don't want to trash this too hard because, well, I know it's going to be really hard to not do that with a book you don't like. But I will give this book one good thing, is that I actually really like the plot device, despite it not being written very well. I like that there's actually a real threat to the Star Wars galaxy. Is her brother Dalian, he's wanting to use dark matter energy to open up like this portal, and potentially bad things could happen, and it could destroy all of Tython and everything surrounding it. So that's bad, and that's really bad for the Star Wars galaxy. And I really like that idea. That idea is pretty great. I just wish that it was written differently. Like this whole story, it has potential. I feel like when Tim Lebbon wrote this down, it sounded good in his head, but I feel like if you actually go through and reread it, it's not working well. It's not a story that actually would work well as a full scale novel. I know for a fact that they had like a full trilogy for Dawn of the Jedi planned out, but Disney happened, and who knows? Maybe Lannery could have had a better character arc in the following books. Maybe she would have even appeared in some comics, because that'd be great if they tied in the comics, because the comics, like I said, they're great. This book, it's set in the same exact time period as the Force Wars, but no mentions of it. You'd think that'd be like a big deal, all the Jedi would be focused on that, but no, it doesn't. So that's just a big problem for me. All right, and speaking of Lannery's character arc, it's just she doesn't have any in this book. There's nothing for her to really overcome mentally or physically, and that was another problem that I had. I have a lot of problems with the characters in this book. They're all just really bland. It's just Tim Lebbon doesn't know how to write Star Wars. And it's written in first person, and when you have a main character that's just not very interesting, you're not in tune with them. So it's just like you don't care. You don't care what's going on with them, because there's nothing interesting about them. And then her brother Dalian, who's obviously the villain, it's just he doesn't like the Force. It doesn't really. Tim Lebbon doesn't even explain why he doesn't like the Force. Like, why would you not want to use the Force? I don't understand. It's like he's very negative towards everyone, including Lannery. Nobody knows why he doesn't want to use the Force, but he just doesn't. So I don't understand that. I feel like I would understand it better if Tim Lebbon would actually tell me why he doesn't like the Force. And I think part of that also makes the ending very anticlimactic. Spoilers, by the way. Although it's not very an interesting book, so I don't recommend you read it anyway, so it's probably not a big deal. At the end, it's very anticlimactic, because essentially she has a sidekick with her, Trey Sana, who she takes along, and they essentially play Blue's Clues and just hop from planet to planet. Oh no, he got away! Oh no! So, and then when they finally reach him, Dalian's giving like this big epic boss fight speech. This is why I did this and this and this. Gets stabbed. No epic fight scene. And like I said, I think part of that is because he doesn't like the Force. He doesn't use the Force. And, it kind of does show him resisting the Force a little bit, but it still doesn't tell us why. It's like, Oh, I wish they told me what was going on with him because I want to get more into the mind of Dalian Brock, but just Tim Lebbon won't let me. It flips back and forth a lot, like a lot, and there's no indication whatsoever. That was another problem with, I think, the way he wrote this book. Is I wish that he had like made another paragraph that was split, made like a little spacing between, just skip a couple lines, or maybe have all the words italicized when it flips back to the past. But no, it flips back to the past in the present with really no indication of when it's going to do that, and so it makes it really hard to follow through, and it certainly was for me on my first time reading. Oh man, this book took me a long time to read. It was so boring. There was no action whatsoever. Like the 90% of the action that happened was when they were flipping back and forth into the past, to show some of like Lannery and Dalian's training, in the Jedi, in the like with the Jedi and stuff. I could nitpick a lot about this book, but I feel like I would just be going on forever. Well, I'll give a few examples of some of the things I'm nitpicky about. Like with the Force Punch. What's up? What? I don't get what he means by that, because the way that Tim Lebbon describes a Force Punch, he describes it more like a Force Push. So it's like, why not just call it a Force Push then? Because when I think Force Punch, I think like a great example of this is like when Mace Windu is like punching all the super battle droids with his bare fists in Tartakovsky's Clone Wars. That stuff is awesome, but Tim Lebbon doesn't write it that way. I mean, with books are very descriptive, So I don't understand why he didn't just call it a Force Push. If you want it to be a Force Punch, make it a Force Punch, man. I just choose one or the other. Yeah, I'd say I'm probably right here with just about everyone else. Brennan, Matt. I know some people like this book, but it's just, I feel like the majority consensus is that this book is just not good, and there's a reason why. I would not allow any Star Wars fan who's getting into the expanded universe. I would not let them stumble upon this book. Heck, you know what the funny whole part of this whole thing is? This is the first Star Wars book I ever read, by the way. I feel like that should be pointed out. I literally almost quit reading Star Wars because it was so bad. It's the most boring story that you will ever read. It's like sitting at the DMV is how I felt just reading this book. I can't even explain to you how boring it was. There's nothing fun about this. I really, really hate to put so much crap on this book, especially my first ever, like, book review. Like I said, disclaimer, I don't hate the expanded universe. I'm not here just to judge every bad thing about a book. But the sad part about this book is that there's just no redeeming qualities about it. This was Do not read this book, please. I promise that like I said, I will have better book reviews than this in the future. In fact, I plan on doing Darth Bane Path of Destruction pretty soon. So many people were requesting this, and I was like, you know what? Let's bite the bullet and just review Dawn of the Jedi. I know it's going to be a complete utter crap review of just me just saying all the bad things I hate about this book, but honestly, if it were for all you guys out there, there's so many people, so many friends that I've made in like the last 6 months. You guys know who you are, so I'm not gonna spend forever listing off names. But if it weren't for you guys, I would have thrown this in the trash already and just stopped reading Star Wars. So if it weren't for you guys, I would have quit the EU because of this book. Now I'm sure Tim Lebbon, he probably does better in other stories. I know he's the author of the Relic series, and he's written some Alien and Predator novels, which I'm going to be getting into, and I'm sure I'll review them on this channel at some point. So this probably won't be the last that we will see of Tim Lebbon on my channel. But he just does not know how to write Star Wars. The only way that I would agree to read another Dawn of the Jedi novel is if it was actually better. Like I said, if they gave her a character arc, or if they actually included more stuff that was, actually meaningful, because this whole book is pointless, then I think I would probably read more. But yeah, this So I'm gonna end it there because I know I've I don't want to keep going further and I don't want to repeat myself. So thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate you. May the force be with you always, and I will see you next time.
My brain, I think I told you this, was leaking out of my ears. I was so shocked at what I was reading.